Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto was Fairy Queen's apprentice. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. I have created a playlist of this what if and other what ifs, make sure to check them as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. No, not going to happen. The third Hokage stated after listening to Naruto's request. Naruto's jaw was dropped at the fact the third Hokage was rejecting the idea of getting one of the Sannin back into the village. He was stunned into shock because of this, while Hiruzen blew smoke from his mouth out of the window. Oh come on old man, Tsunade has to be good for something in the village. Naruto complained with an upset look. The third smiled at Naruto a little, before he leaned back in his chair and smiled wider at Naruto. It was obvious to him why Naruto wanted Tsunade to come back, for that Rock Lee boy, and he found that to be a great thing. It wasn't a good enough reason for him to send Naruto away from the village again so soon after the attempt at capturing him. It would take a whole lot more than that for him to even consider it. Sorry, but no Naruto. I have a very important mission for you that is of much more importance. With your recent show of skills in the last Chunin exams, a certain village has finally decided to agree to allow a small group of Konoha ninja to go into their village and talk over an alliance. The condition is that you go with the group so they can see the boy that has great respect for Kunoichi. Hiruzen stated with an awkward expression on his face. Honestly, and by that he meant he had just lied when he said part of his reason, the reason why they wanted Naruto to go to their village was because they had seen what he had done, and how he had dressed in clothes that were obviously made for a female. Huh? Naruto asked in confusion. Yes, you are going to be going on a mission to a village that has taken an interest in you. Their demands being that as a show of trust, you be allowed into their village. They see you as a valuable ninja, so letting you go to a neutral village as a show of trust will increase our chances for an alliance. Hiruzen said as he took another drag from his pipe. He was looking at Naruto with a kind look, but also one that showed he was very wary of sending Naruto to another village. Of course, anything that could inspire another alliance with other villages was something that he would have to weigh against the potential to lose a great asset to the village. Jinchuriki were considered army busters for a reason. A fully trained Jinchuriki could turn the tide in a war, and it was unknown if an alliance with a certain village would be worth risking a Jinchuriki, even more so one of the most powerful tailed beast. Naruto had already shown skills enough to defeat another Jinchuriki, meaning that he had a lot of potential in him. It was impossible to say just how much potential he had, even more so when one looked at who his parents were, and just how unreal his chakra reserves were. Even after so many fights back to back, Naruto had still had a lot of chakra left to fight with. That said just how overwhelming his chakra was, even though most of the time you couldn't tell how much chakra he would produce unless you were fighting him. It was like he had some kind of unconscious way to block out most of his chakra from the sensing ability of those around him. Well, that seems like bull to me. I mean seriously, I don't respect ninja unless they are awesome or strong. Naruto said with a wave of his hand, not really caring about the mission since the reason seemed so stupid in a way. They liked what he looked like, so they wanted to meet him. It seemed like a pretty shallow reason to him to want to meet him. Well, the mission is in a week from now, so you have little choice in the matter. Hiruzen said with a twitching eye, and Naruto pouted at him. He made his cheeks bulge out, and he forced a sad look into his eyes, with a single stray tear falling from his left eye. Hiruzen coughed into his hand and looked out the window, making Naruto return to normal and snap his armored fingers in annoyance. Damn it, okay, who am I working with? Naruto asked with a tilt of his head. You are going to be working with Nico. Hiruzen stated, meaning the Anbu that was named after the mask she wore, a cat. Her real name wasn't something that Naruto was allowed to learn, but she was simply a guard and the official liaison for the peace talks between the nations. He would have sent another person, but most of the more powerful people in the village were male, and the village that was interested in Naruto was not a village that allowed for normal shinobi to enter their village. Naruto would be the first male ninja to be actually accepted, without having been kidnapped. Who? Naruto asked with a deadpan tone. He was pretty sure that he hadn't heard of a person by that name before. An Anbu, codenamed Nico. She will be going on the mission with you, and is in charge of the mission. Hiruzen stated simply, not telling him that she was going with him so that nothing unjust happened to him. If something bad happened to him, then he was sure that people that knew how important Naruto was would start to panic and throw fits. It would be pure chaos, and it would be just like inviting people to attack the village. Saying they had no Jinchuriki would be like inviting people to attack them, or worse, gang up on them and get rid of them completely. A week, huh? Naruto said when he remembered when Hiruzen said the mission would be. A week. I am so sorry. Hiruzen said when he realized what was wrong with the timing of the mission. What? What is wrong with the mission being in a week? Urza asked as she came out of Naruto, wondering what was wrong with the mission taking place in 1 week. Naruto shook his head, before he smiled widely. Don't worry about it, old man, I don't even celebrate my birthday, so taking a mission on that day is fine by me. Naruto said after a moment, getting a sad nod from Hiruzen. It was no secret that Naruto never celebrated his birthday, it was a village-wide day of mourning, so nobody would celebrate it with him anyway. People had better things to do than come to his birthday, and he didn't have friends for the longest time to celebrate with, so he just stopped celebrating it completely. The last time he celebrated it was when he was 5, and that was a while back. Oh. Urza said after first, before she shouted it in shock a second time when her eyes wide and almost cat-like in surprise. Is there anything you want for your birthday though? Hiruzen asked kindly, and Naruto grinned to himself at the thought of a prank. Naruto's body glowed golden, before it stopped glowing, and he was shown with one hand on his hip and the other one on the back of his head. Hiruzen choked on his pipe when he looked at Naruto in his armor, if it could be called that. Think you can get me this in orange? Naruto asked with a grin. He was right now wearing a one-piece leotard with no shoulders to it. It also had no legs either, and it stopped a few inches above his nipples. It was light blue, and had random dark blue stripes in some areas. Naruto had a collar around his neck tightly, with a piece of paper with a ceiling tag on it. On each hand he had oversized white paws, styled like fuzzy cat paws. He also had a long white tail moving behind him, and his hair was done in a ponytail at the back with fake cat ears in white on top of his head. Strangely enough, he had one blue combat boots. The bottom of the leotard ended in a pantoline sort of style. The top of it had a white fuzzy area circling it. PFT. Hiruzen shot smoke from his mouth out of surprise, making a strange noise as he did so. I approve of this. Urza stated as she circled around him and viewed her cat suit he was in, the sexy cat costume. She herself had worn it many times whenever she was reading a book about cats, or when she was trying to disguise herself in a way so that people wouldn't recognize her. Of course, she only recently learned that it was a failure of a disguise. She liked how it looked on Naruto, and with his natural-born whiskers it fit him so much better than it could ever fit her. It was something that he had already surpassed her in. She was so proud. Now of course, Hiruzen wasn't expecting Naruto to suddenly come out of the glow dressed in what one would expect a woman to wear when she wanted to be a sexy cat. He had been mentally unprepared for what had happened. His reaction continued when he backed up and fell out of his chair, knocked into his shelf, and had all of the books and scrolls fall right on top of him in his surprise. Soon the entire shelf itself tilted over, before it fell on top of him, and crushed him under its and the book's weight. Naruto's face matched Urza's moments later, and his eyes gained the cat shape to them. He looked even more like a cat, and if his hair had been black, then he would more than likely have been even more of the cause of Hiruzen's bad luck. Naruto started to slowly back towards the window to make his escape from the possible crime scene. Naruto grabbed the edge of the window and stuck his leg and half his body out, before he fully left, seeing a twitching hand. Naruto closed the window behind him, and stood on the roof outside of the window. Naruto ducked under the window and he started to crawl away before anyone came, or Hiruzen dug himself out of the books and scrolls and bookshelf. Naruto jumped off the roof, and he landed in front of a Chunin. The Chunin looked at Naruto, before his eyes rolled up into the back of his head at the strange sight of a cat trap falling from the sky and landing in front of him. Naruto grinned at getting 2 people for the price of 1. The sexy cat costume is a weapon of meow-ass destruction, Urza said, making a horrible pun with the word meow and mass. Naruto gave her a look, before he held his hands up in a pawing post-ion. That was a horrible pun, meow. Naruto stated, getting a thumbs up from Urza for making the meow sound when he finished talking. The two were so alike when it came to base personality that it was scary for Urza to imagine if it had been predestined for him to stumble upon her grave. The two of them were so compatible. He was an eager young person that was willing to do anything that it took to grow stronger and protect his allies, while she was somebody that was more than willing to teach so that he could learn the importance of comrades, something he already knew. I don't know, I think it was perfect, Urza said, adding in an extra purr to the way she said perfect, another cat pun. Let's stop, Naruto stated to her, and she nodded to him with a small ghost blush on her face, even though she had no blood at all to blush. It was strange that her ghost body could do a lot of the stuff her regular body could do, though it was partly affected by the condition of Naruto's body. She could taste the things he tasted for one. Sometimes when she annoyed him he would eat something really bitter just to mess with him, and then he would gag bows he hated bitter things as well. Hey Naruto, what are you wearing? A voice called from behind him. Oh, hey, Tenten. I'm a sexy kitty, Naruto said as he took a cat position with his tongue stuck out in a slightly mocking way when he saw Tenten behind him. She rolled her eyes at his joke, before she looked him over with a critical eye and started to walk behind him and circled around. Naruto suddenly felt a little self-conscious with her looking over him like this. She had her hand on her chin in thought. I like it. It really brings out your whisker marks, though it would have more of a wow effect if you had cat paws for boots as well, Tenten said, going with the flow about Naruto's strange choice in dress. She for one didn't care, he was growing stronger and stronger each day using these clothes, so who was she to judge what he did with them, or what they looked like? Pink wasn't as feminine a color as everyone thought. Pink was actually a color that used to be considered masculine, and her own clothes were decidedly masculine as well. She dressed like a boy on purpose, though fitted a little to fit her frame. If Naruto wanted to dress like a girl, then more power to him. She actually liked guys like him. Those with slightly feminine traits, that is. Face it, Niji had slightly feminine looks and she had liked him at one point, before he dissed her dream when they introduced himself. She had thought Sasuke was cute, and he was a feminine boy as well. Both of those boys were slightly feminine in looks, but nobody called them out on it most of the time. Yeah well, your clothes need more orange, Naruto declared to her, and she shrugged and looked at him with a glint in her eye. Yeah, I will get right on that. Are we still on for that date you promised me? Tenten asked with a smile on her face. Urza next to Naruto looked interested in this development. Being a woman herself, she could see when there was desire in another woman's eyes much easier. This girl was clearly desiring something from Naruto, most likely trying to get a foothold and set a stable relationship with him before his looks started to truly come in and he turned into a dreamboat, or whatever that term was. Urza had never really needed to use such a term before, having been single all her life, and death, never having had a single boyfriend, lover, or even had a one-night stand. Urza twitched in annoyance. She had died a virgin. Yeah sure, but it needs to be soon. I have a mission in a week, and I want to get in as much training as possible, Naruto said with a grin on his face. Nothing beat a hard day's work to him, and Tenten twitched at the mention of training. Oh yeah, I get it. Missions come first, but hey, finding time between training and missions to go on a date are problems ninja have, Tenten stated without showing any issues with the fact that things would be rushed because of work. She was a girl, yes, and as a girl she wanted to go on a perfectly romantic date, but she was also a ninja and tomboy. She understood that growing stronger for the village, and earning the village money came first. She wasn't some shallow girl that believed that she was more important than the whole. Well, see you later. Let's meet up soon. Naruto shouted at her as he ran off, leaving her in the dust with an awkward smile on her face. She scratched the back of her head with a smile on her face still. She would have to ask him to be her boyfriend soon, before she was put in the friend zone. You know, this isn't a very romantic idea for a date. Tenten said as she looked at the point of a sword directed at her face. She was laying on her back, her clothes cut up with a ton of small cuts, and her skin littered with more than a few cuts as well that were still bleeding at this moment. She was sweating, and the parts of her clothes that weren't covered in blood or cuts were tainted with dirt. Her let bun had been cut, so her hair on the left side of her hair was splayed on the ground. She also had a wicked bruise on the right side of her face. Naruto was sitting on her chest, below her breasts, with his sword pointed down at her head to show that he had won their match. He had a few cuts as well, and his heart crew's armor was scratched up, dented, and even had more than a few holes in it that were slightly strained with blood coming out of them. His right gauntlet had been shattered, and some scorch marks rested on his back. His skirt had been ripped up near the bottom of it, and he had a black eye from being hit in the face with a bow staff that Tenten had used against him mid-fight. He was sweating as well, but only lightly. This wasn't their first round of sparring this day. More like the spar number 16 or 17. Naruto's face took on one of shock for a moment at the fact his idea of a date, and her idea of a date were two different ones. He had been told by Urza that couples fought with each other to grow closer, so by sparring with her he believed that they were growing closer. Well, Urza had also said that the secrets of the universe were cake-shaped, so not everything she said was perfect. Urza had never dated, had sex, had a boyfriend, lover, or even any romantic contact with anyone other than a kiss apparently, so maybe her advice wasn't the best advice in this situation. It isn't? Urza asked out loud, floating next to Naruto with a confused expression on her face. It isn't? Naruto asked Tenten with a curious look on his face, not knowing what to make of a real date when he had never been on one before. Tenten pushed him off her and wiped her brow with her forearm to get some of the blood off of her. They had made sure that all cuts they made on each other were rather shallow, so not as to kill each other with their weapons. Tenten looked at Naruto with a jealous face when she saw his wounds steam over, and vanish like they had never been there. He healed far too quickly to be fair, a few seconds and small cuts were gone after they had begun to heal. It isn't. Tenten told him as she sat up. Strange. I thought growing stronger together would be perfect for the two of you. Urza muttered to herself as she looked at the couple. She was going to have to try much harder to push the dense Naruto into making some sort of move of Tenten. Urza could feel everything that Naruto felt, because his body was her body, in a way. She wanted to experience the things she had missed out through him, dating, romance, dirty things as well. Like the kind she had always read about in books and magazines. Isn't growing stronger together romantic? Naruto asked with a confused expression still on his face. This was my last good outfit. If that weren't the case, I would think you wanting to make me stronger as very romantic. Now I have to go buy new clothes, damn, and I was hoping this would last longer than the last one. Oh well, I got a year of good work out of it. Tenten said as she picked herself up off the ground and dusted herself off a little. She was caked in blood and dirt, so there was no real reason for her to even try to dust herself off. Wanna go by the creek and get cleaned up a little? Naruto said as he pointed over at the shallow creek that had a few fish jumping out of the water. Of course, on the ground were a ton of kunai that had been thrown by Tenten. Naruto had already stored all of his weapons back into his pocket dimension for later use. Yeah, sure. Tenten said after a moment as she unstringed her top and shrugged it off, to show that she was wearing a sports bra underneath. The preferred type of bra for any kunoichi without huge knockers. It was also something that could be worn as a top, being able to cover her breasts like a small tank top on its own. Tenten was only about a B cup, so she could wear a sports bra with comfort while also retaining her modesty. She undid the string to her pants as well, and they slid off of her and showed that she was wearing orange boxers. Naruto's eyes were drawn to them right away. The girl knows what she is doing. Urza thought with a raised eyebrow. Tenten was wearing clothes that were both arousing, but also decent enough to not risk looking like a loose woman for stripping into them. It showed that she had thought long and hard about this, not only what she was going to wear, but also that she was going to find some excuse to attract Naruto to her using them. The girl was very smart, and knew more than a little about the kunoichi arts of seduction. She wasn't some slouch when it came to going after something she wanted. Urza liked this girl, she honestly liked her. "What are you doing?" Naruto asked in shock, and Tenten sent him a dull look. "Getting ready for a dip in the water." "Don't tell me you swim fully clothes. For a guy that wears sexy clothes you sure are shy around a girl," Tenten said with a small smile on her face. Her light taunting as an attempt to get Naruto to strip down. She knew that Naruto wasn't the kind to know when he was being taunted into doing something. "Shy? I am not shy." Naruto delcard boldly as his body glowed while he was running at Tenten. She was surprised, and she didn't see what he changed into because moments later she was tackled by Naruto as he sent both of them flying towards the water. She looked down at his scarlety red hair, before they both splashed into the water with a large splash. She spat out some water, spraying it on Naruto's head. She grinned to herself at her taunt working against him, knowing that he wouldn't be able to resist proving her wrong. "Was tackling me needed?" Tenten asked with a raised eyebrow when she saw that Naruto's face was pressed against her stomach. The two of them were soaked already, and Naruto sat up in the water after a few moments and spat out some water. He stayed in the sitting position for a bit and looked at her with a glare, well, a mock glare. "I am not shy," Naruto said with a twitching eye. "Damn right you aren't shy. You can't be a requip user that fights using the night style of requip if you are ashamed of your body," Urza stated with her arms crossed. At first, she herself had been shy about using her style of magic for anything other than weapons. Then when she stopped being shy about her body, she had grown much stronger when she had been able to add armors to what she could change out into. Naruto was a lot less shy about his body than she was, though he did have some doubts about some of her armors. "That is good, I wouldn't want you to be shy, now would I?" Tenten asked as she viewed his upper body, which was naked. Naruto was toned and slender for his age, a nice body to be sure. The fact he was still growing was a sign of good things. Tenten was sure that if Naruto had calmed down a little more and wore clothes that weren't baggy, then he still wore baggy clothes, that some girl would have noticed him by now. Well, that Hyuga girl noticed Naruto, but Tenten was not going to share or play nice. She wanted Naruto, and fuck anyone else that tried to be with him. Tenten knew that as an Uzumaki, that Naruto would be able to start his own clan back. It wasn't a very well-kept secret. Konoha had been allies with the Uzumaki clan before the destruction and scattering of said clan. The fact that he was named Uzumaki, and had the signature red Uzumaki hair only made it so obvious. At first, when he was blonde, she had thought it was just a last name that meant nothing, and then she saw more and more and saw the Uzumaki in him. Of course, she had no memory of any Uzumaki using swords or this kind of skill in battle. Most of them just used their powerful chakra into weaving unique fuinjutsu that no other nation could compete with in that area. It was why they had been targeted and destroyed by so many other villages. Naruto, a boy with strong chakra named Uzumaki, that can use powerful jutsu that cost a lot of chakra so easily. The fact his chakra itself was potent, and his now red hair further made this connection stronger. Also, the fact that the last known Uzumaki, besides Naruto, was a confirmed Uzumaki named Kushina Uzumaki, and she was noted to having died during the Kyuubi incident on Naruto's birthday only made his inheritance that much more obvious to anyone that had actually paid attention in class. Kushina Uzumaki was no slouch, having been an elite jonin that fought in the last war and made a name for herself. The fact of the matter is that people had seen a pregnant Kushina Uzumaki on the day of her death, and Naruto's birth. The fact that Kushina Uzumaki was known to having been pregnant with the fourth Hokage's child, that hadn't really been a secret either. Many people had seen the two of them together all the time, and though they had different last names, the fact they were a couple and had a home together was more than enough to confirm for people that she was pregnant with his child. Of course, that led her to the conclusion that Naruto was the son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. When he had been blonde, he had looked like a carbon copy of the fourth Hokage, and now he looks like a carbon copy of Kushina Uzumaki, with different eyes. How nobody else had noticed this was beyond Tenten, when the facts were staring everyone right in the face that the legacy of two great and powerful ninja. You didn't even have to look that hard to find the truth of the matter. She was not about to let such a catch slip through her fingers, because some shy little girl had a crush on him. He was already showing signs of being a very powerful ninja in his own right, and was the son of one of Tenten's top 3 role models. Tsunade Senju being her top role model, Kushina Uzumaki being her second favorite, and Mito Uzumaki being her third favorite. I'm Naruto Uzumaki, being shy is something I don't do, Naruto boldly stated with a grin on his face. Tenten rolled her eyes, before she grabbed his head and dunked it under the water so that bubbles started to come up. She let him up moments later and he sprayed the water in her face, soaking her face even more than it was before. Hey, I have been meaning to ask you something, you are a guy, so why doesn't your penis or nuts slip out when you wear panties? Tenten asked a question she had been wondering for a while now after seeing the Flame Empress armor he used. It didn't leave much to the imagination. Well, the panties are part of the armor to make sure that nothing slips out. Everything in them stays in them. It is how I fought without worrying about anything slipping out. Urza told him when Naruto blinked and looked confused about that as well. He gained a knowing look in his eyes, since it sort of made sense to him. The panties are special, what about your boxers? Naruto asked with a wiggling eyebrow. Tenten stood up and the boxers were shown clinging to her skin, showing off the nice curve she had to her butt. These, trust me when I say it wasn't something completely by choice. Believe it or not, they are more sturdy than panties, and I have summoning seals on the inside of them. I can launch a surprise attack. Tenten said as she reached down the front of the boxers, and in a puff of smoke that came out of the legs of the boxers, she showed that she was now holding a dagger when she pulled her hand out of her boxers. Naruto blinked in surprise at the fact that she didn't wear them just to wear them, but instead she had a real reason for wearing them as well. Tenten put her hand with the dagger back into the boxers, before she made a hand sign and smoke puffed out of the boxers again, showing she had her dagger stored away. Smart girl. Wow, you have got to teach me how to do that, Naruto said as he leaned forward and looked at the front of her boxers. Tenten blushed a little bit, but knew his attention wasn't on her crotch, but on the boxers themselves that she had seals imprinted on. Summoning seals were seals that allowed you to store weapon away in a small rip in space and time, keeping items stored in a time-safe space. Time would have no effect on anything stores inside of the seal. It was one of the more basic times of space-time sealing techniques. I think you are covered in weapons. You don't need to learn Fuinjutsu to store things away, Tenten stated in a dull tone. Naruto's ability to store weapons and armors far exceeded what her ability with Fuinjutsu was able to do with the same generate skill. He didn't need to write it down on anything, or use any medium to summon back the objects. Now that she mentions it, it seems like a more basic, but useful, form of requip. Urza muttered as she thought about it. Naruto had to train to lower the summoning time of his weapons and armors, but Tenten could summon things in an instant without having to constantly train to lower the time. Of course, she couldn't do the same with armor, and just make it appear on her body. Of course, if her scroll was stolen then she would lose the weapons she had. In a way it was a more basic, and less potent, form of requip. Fuinjutsu seems pretty cool though, Naruto said with a grin on his face. He didn't really have any experience with the art, but he saw something cool about it when Tenten used it like that. Tenten reached down into the water, before she splashed him in the face. Naruto covered his eyes with his hands at the surprise attack, before he splashed the water in her face and stood up in the second that she was covering her face. Naruto grabbed her by the wrist, before he jumped back and forced her face first into the water, flopping onto her stomach. Naruto laughed at how she got submerged in the water. Naruto himself was sitting up again, relaxed in the slightly cool water. It never got very cold in Konoha, even in winter it wasn't that cold. Ass! Tenten insulted as she came up from the water again and brushed her showing bang out of her face, her hair down and flat on her head. Her other bun had come undone this time. You started it, Naruto said with a grin on his face, and Tenten splashed water at him with a small smile on her face. She was actually having some fun right now, even though she had expected something different. Of course, Naruto was going on a mission tomorrow, so she was just lucky that she got today with him before he went off. The multiple spars had been slightly fun as well, though it was just them clashing blades. She had the skill advantage, but he had the speed and power advantage. In the end, they had been about evenly matched in the simple spars. They didn't fight at full power, just with their weapons. Yeah, well, you are lucky you're cute, Tenten stated with a small grin on her face. Oh yeah, well, you are lucky that. Naruto trailed off with a look of concentration on his face. What, can't think of anything? Tenten taunted him with a teasing smile. Naruto blushed in embarrassment, before he kicked out his leg and splashed her again. She grabbed his leg this time, and pulled, making him stand up. Naruto was forced into standing, since Tenten still had a hold on his foot. Naruto was hopping up and down to try and stay standing without falling, and Tenten looked down at him. Naruto was naked. Why are you naked? Tenten asked with a raised eyebrow, but she still had a deep blush on her face as she looked up. She was used to weird stuff, but she wasn't used to seeing a guy naked. Then again, Naruto was naked whenever he changed armors. The only difference was that he had his part covered by the glow, or the swirling golden energy that surrounded him when he changed armor. She was going to try to go with the flow, but her eyes kept wandering down. Well, we are washing the sweat and grime. Everyone knows you get naked when you bathe, Naruto told her with an eye raised as well. Urza was next to him, nodding in agreement with her eyes showing approval of his actions. Yes, many a times I had taken showers with my guildmates. There is no problem with nudity between comrades, Urza said with a sure tone to her voice. She saw nothing wrong with some skinship between people that worked, fought, and bonded together. Of course, her views on modesty were tainted by the fact that she had very little shame in her body. Most people would likely not agree with her, but in her opinion, fuck everyone that disagreed. She would teach her student that, and of course, she was with him every time that he bathed these days, so he just got used to a female seeing him naked. You really don't believe that a girl and guy sharing bathing together is wrong, do you? Tenten asked, with a raised eyebrow. Sure, it was not an uncommon practice for shared bathing at a hot springs where girls and guys bathed together, but it was a more rare event these days instead of permanent thing. Most hot springs only did shared bathing around midnight, when only a few people would come. Separate bathing was way more common than not nowadays. Nope, why? Naruto asked with a tilted head, and Tenten blinked. Tenten took a calming breath, before she let go of his foot and pushed on his chest and made him stumble into the water. Don't expect me to get naked in front of you anytime soon, got it? You know, a lot of people were wondering if you were actually a girl in disguise. I guess this proves them wrong since that little guy right there proves your gender, Tenten said as she gave him a wink. Naruto blinked at the wink, not understanding why she was winking. What is up with the wink? Naruto asked with a tilted head. Tenten face planted into the water when she tripped out of surprise at him not getting it. Tenten stood up with a blush on her face, before she face-palmed. Idiot, I was saying that despite what you wear you are still a guy. Now just put something on, this will be awkward for me if anyone comes here, Tenten said, and in a golden glow Naruto was wearing a towel around his waist. She sighed in relief, not because she didn't enjoy the view, because she did enjoy it. No, she wanted him to cover up because they were in a training ground and anyone could come and see them. Tenten was in clothes that, while sounded like they indecent, were actually decent to wear in public as swim attire. Naruto was naked, and that was the difference. People might think she was assaulting him or something. Okay, Naruto said in a questioning way. Tenten looked at herself and saw that all the sweat and blood had already come off, as well as the dirt. Since that was done, she went over and got out of the water. Tenten grinned to herself as she grabbed a towel that she used to clean her weapons out of her backpack she used when training. She dried herself off, before she grabbed a box of bandages and started to place them wherever she had a cut. She had a lot of them, but she was able to cover all the cuts rather quickly. She wasn't like Naruto, who healed in seconds. You know, most guys would be embarrassed if they were in your shoes. Tenten said as she smiled and started to put on a basic blue t-shirt and jeans. Why? I am comfy with my body, if people don't like that they can suck it. Naruto told her as he stepped out of the water and took the towel off and started to dry his body off. Tenten face palmed at how stupid he was. She asked him to put something on so that he wasn't naked, and he takes it off in seconds without a care. I wish I had a body, because if I wrote a book about this I am sure it would be popular. Urza said with a small smile as she watched the scene play out. Well, from now on, you can't be naked in front of any other girls but me. They won't take it as well as me. I put up with my weird team, so I am immune to weird things. Others aren't like me. Tenten told him, though she didn't tell him that she didn't want him to be naked in front of other girls simply because she didn't want others to see him naked. She wanted him to herself, damn it, and she wasn't even in the mood for competition. Can't promise that, Naruto stated, knowing that it wasn't something he could promise. His magic made it impossible for him to promise that, since he became naked for split seconds or later when he used it to change armors. Damn, well, at least keep little Naruto under control when you are nude, Tenten said with an accusing finger at him, pointing at his crotch. Little? Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow. That issue is either just unlucky genetics, or my fault for being female and merging with you, Urza said with a raised eyebrow. Naruto turned his head and mentally asked her what she was talking about, and she shrugged her shoulders. It isn't like it matters though. Not only are you young, but most of the nerves for pleasure in a woman are at the first 2 inches and the clit. Focus on that and everything is good, Urza stated with a shrug of her shoulders. She might not have ever had sex, but she at least knew her own body, and the female body from the erotic novels that she read. People these days seem to think it was natural for a 12 or 13-year-old boy to have a 12-inch penis, something that is not only completely unrealistic, but also completely stupid. Urza was no sex expert from experience, but from the magazines and books she had read the normal size was nowhere even close to that. Anyone that said otherwise was a dumbass or a liar. How dumb would it look to have something a foot long sitting from your body, for most people Naruto's age, that would look hilarious, even ugly. Not to mention it would be completely useless since a woman could not fit that much inside of her vagina. Yeah, don't all guys refer to their junk as little and then their name? Tenten asked as Naruto clothed himself in his armor again. Naruto blinked again, before he shrugged. Naruto didn't really have too many friends, so Tenten more than likely knew more about this than him. He could count his real friends on his hands, and he didn't really talk to them that often. Oh, so that is what you meant. I thought you were calling it small, Naruto said with a sigh of relief. You didn't take sex ed in the academy, did you? Tenten asked with a dull look on her face. It would explain a lot about how naive Naruto is in these matters if he just didn't know better. Sex ed was an optional class as well, so she doubted that Naruto cared enough to take it. Nope, why? Naruto asked with a blink, and she smiled for a second. Well, this actually made things easier for her. Well, just so you know, size doesn't matter. Any girl that took the seduction class will tell you that size doesn't matter. Anyway, it almost always looks a lot smaller than it is unaroused. You can't judge it when it isn't. Oh, and from now on I am going to be teaching you sex ed. I can't let you remain ignorant. Tenten said with a smirk on her face as she crossed her arms, not knowing that Erza was crossing her arms behind Naruto as well. If anyone was going to teach it to Naruto, then by all means it should be Erza, but she would let this girl do the teaching. It would be amusing for her to watch this. Erza approved of this girl. She knew what she wanted, and how she was going to make it hers. Of course, if she broke Naruto's heart, then she was a dead girl. Erza didn't care if she was a ghost, she would find some way to make the girl pay for hurting her, apprentice, little brother, son. Actually, she didn't really know what she was to Naruto. Sometimes she saw him as a son, sometimes as a brother, and other times she saw him as her apprentice, a few times she saw him as an extension of herself. Anyway, if Tenten screwed up, then she was screwed. She would make sure of it. Thanks for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. I have created a playlist of this what if where you guys can find all the parts. See you in the next video.